Good morning, everybody, and good morning to our wonderful session this morning on Wellness Recovery Action Plan, fondly known as the WRAP, and Wellness Self-Management. We were doing our deep breathing, getting into the setting of wellness before saying hello to you. We hope you're having a good day, and we're just remarking on how people are so focused on weather being sunny and -2 for poor James. We're sorry to hear that, James, in Dauphin, Manitoba. We welcome you all, though, and we look forward to an amazing session. We have some wonderful presenters this morning, and we'll tell you all about them just now. So just to give you a little bit of background, we do this every time, but just so you know who you're working with, we have wonderful expertise from Jordan Clark, who provides technology support for us. You'll know Matthew on the right. Matthew Lang is coordinator and moderator of the sessions, and Matthew you will be connected with as you sign up for these sessions. He also a wonderful troubleshooter, and generally he's here by my side, which means that things go smoothly. So we're very grateful to Matthew for his help. On the bottom left-hand corner, we have Dr. John Higginbottom, and John, this whole webinar series is really the brainchild of John, who was keen to develop for us a community of practice and a center of excellence that speaks about psychosocial rehabilitation practices and values, and to provide tools and a place where we who work in this area, receive service in this area, and family members can come together and learn and grow as a profession. So we're very grateful to John Higginbottom. And then myself, you'll see on the right-hand corner. BC Advanced Practice, you'll know, is funded by the Ministry of Health to provide leadership, education, and guidance to the mental health field and develop and put effective evidence-based psychosocial rehabilitation practices into place. And a moment to just really deeply thank our instructors for their support and expertise. Really, we couldn't do it without their help, and this is all volunteer work on their part. So really, we are grateful to the community to provide us these educational opportunities. We ask you to please do have a look on the website. You'll find, if you haven't before, some powerful archive sessions. And this is number 17, webinar number 17. And so we're really proud of the work, and we're proud of the kind of education that we're offering each other. So thanks, Matt, for that, for just showing the location. And you probably know this, but just in case you don't know, we are one of 4 other advanced practice opportunities in British Columbia. There's also one for early prevention and intervention, one for ACT, and one for disability, developmental disability and mental health as well. So we just want to give a shout out to our friends who are doing some of this similar work as well. You'll know the purpose of what we're trying to do is just transferring that evidence-based knowledge, provide expert clinician consultation. So if you're working in an organization, we have in the past been able to provide some support, may come and do some education, some consultation with your organization, and then provide these webinars, website resources. You'll notice on there we have updated our annotated bibliography as of 2015. And so what we're trying to do is just highlight and annotate the best evidence that we have to date. And that was updated, as I say, in January. So should you be developing a new program or a new series, we hope that that information is there and useful to you. And then our part of our role is to support the Provincial Advisory Committee and the Committee of Psychosocial Rehabilitation Practice. So, with all that in mind, just to remind you about our upcoming Psychosocial Rehabilitation Conference. Really great to talk to you today, because today is the last day that you can get a reduced rate. So we really encourage you all to please come to our, I promise, sunny Vancouver. You know it rains once in a while, but we forget about that when the sun comes out. We'd truly love to see you. We have a great lineup of speakers for 4 days. You'll see the details there, June 15. Institute 16 to 17 conference program, and then we've amalgamated a housing and supported employment symposium for that June 18th. So hopefully we will see you there. And thanks again, Matt, for providing the registration details. So now we are just a reminder about evaluation. So after every session, we ask you to please evaluate. We ask you to please tell us if you would like to provide webinar, tell us how we're doing, tell us how we can do better. Really, we are hoping to just be the best we can be for you in terms of education. And speaking about the best of the best, we have some great speakers with us today. It is my honor to introduce to you Dr. Judith Cook, who's Professor of Psychiatry in University of Illinois. She directs the Center on Mental Health Services, Research and Policy, and is home to a federally funded Center on Mental Illness and Co-occurring Medical Conditions, as well as a number of research grants and program evaluation contracts. She is internationally recognized authority on mental health services research, specifically the study of clinical rehabilitation outcomes of adults receiving community-based care. Judith designs and implements innovative programs to enhance health and behavioral health of vulnerable populations and works with federal, state, and local authorities on behavioral health service system redesign and alternative financing strategies. Her policy work in Canada includes consultations with ministries and programs in British Columbia, Alberta, Quebec, and Ontario. So we are delighted and honored to have Dr. Cook with us today. I'm really just thrilled that she's agreed to do this, and in particular, Judith has such a good understanding of the Canadian context that I'm sure we'll draw on from today. And equally, we have dear Amanda Berg, who's sitting here beside me on my right, who is a peer support leader and RAP facilitator. Amanda is a person living with mental illness for over 20 years, has actively worked through her recovery. She has an interest in sharing with others, peer support and teaching, building recovery of individual dreams and goals through education and support, so bridges, were big parts of her own recovery. She also facilitates various groups such as Wellness Recovery Action Plan, RAP, that we'll hear about today. Amanda has kindly offered to share her own experience and is currently involved in 2 research studies. So it is a great honor as well to have Amanda with us today. And then we have one final guest who will be with us, not speaking at the beginning of the presentation, but is available for questions. And Jen has her own wellness business called Luminate Wellness. In 2003, Jen introduced the Copeland Centre's revolutionary wellness, recovery, and action plan to British Columbia. She advocated for agency support until the model was integrated into all 14 communities within the Fraser Health Authority. Jen currently supports Fraser Health Authority in developing a large-scale RAP program. So Jen will be available at the end, and she really has some great information about Fraser Health Authority that she will be able to share with us. Before all that, we will hear from Dr. Judith Cook, who will bring us through her presentation. We'll then hear from Amanda, and Dr. Cook will come back, and then we'll have time for discussion. So, dear Dr. Cook, over to you.
Welcome everyone from sunny Chicago. I'm very, very pleased to be here today to talk to you about RAP and about the research that my center has been engaged in on RAP as an evidence-based practice. I think that many times it's difficult for scientists and advocates to work together because they tend to speak different languages and see things in slightly different ways. As this slide shows, there are 3 clocks talking to each other. One is an analog clock, another is a digital clock, and the other is an hourglass. And what's the caption under the cartoon is basically we're all trying to say the same thing. And I think that's particularly the case with the people that have tuned into today's webinar. Basically, we are all interested in recovering from mental health difficulties and in helping other people recover. I, as a scientist, want to introduce everybody on today's webinar to the notion of levels of evidence and the importance of levels of evidence in knowing whether or not an intervention is actually effective in helping people be able to recover and go on with their lives. One way that scientists look at this issue is to literally grade the evidence, like you would get a grade for English or mathematics, according to how strong it is, how sure we are that the intervention is effective. Something is an evidence-based practice if it's been shown to be effective by causing changes that are defined ahead of time. So you need to, not just say, we hope something changes, and look in your research for things that changed and then say, oh, okay, it's an evidence-based practice. You have to say ahead of time what you think is going to change in individuals that receive the practice. And another important thing about evidence-based practices is that they've been shown to change these predefined outcomes when they're tested in something called a randomized control trial, which is a type of research design. I think you're probably all familiar, even if you're not scientists or never had a research course, with what a randomized control trial is, because you're probably pretty familiar with the way in which science and medicine tests things to see if they're effective. People are randomly assigned, and that means by chance, to two different groups, an experimental group that gets the intervention and a control group that doesn't. The randomization creates two equal groups due to the theory of random numbers, and we're able to then compare these two groups after the experimental group gets the intervention to look for differences later. And if those differences are found to exist, then you can say that the intervention that you're testing actually caused the differences, caused the improvement. A randomized control trial is the only research design that allows scientists to say that something caused something else. And the importance of that, I think, will be touched upon in today's webinar. So we're grading an intervention, really grading the evidence for that intervention according to what you could think of as an evidence pyramid. And you'll see on this slide that, that next to the top level are these randomized controlled double-blind studies. We'll talk about what the blinding means in a minute. It certainly doesn't refer to the people being blind. It refers to something else research-based. And the very top, the pinnacle of evidence-based, is that you've done so many randomized controlled trial studies that you can do something called a meta-analysis to look across those studies at an effect size that combines them all, even if they use different outcomes, and even if they were done slightly differently, and even if the statistical analysis was a little bit different. So a typical step in a randomized control trial is that scientists working with whoever created the intervention create a manualized version of how to deliver the intervention. This is just a how-to manual. And what is so great about RAP is, those of you who are familiar with RAP on this call know about the Red Book that Mary Ellen Copeland wrote. And that was the manual that we based our intervention on. We did a little bit of extra work on it for the research study, and I'll talk about that after Amanda talks. Then you have to develop a fidelity assessment that measures the extent to which the intervention is actually delivered according to the way it was designed. Those of you who have received RAP education know that it's very important that you adhere to the tenets of RAP and the components of RAP that Amanda will talk about. And so fidelity is an important part of getting a good intervention, but for scientists it's also an important part of knowing that the intervention was actually delivered in the way that it was designed. You then will train the providers of the intervention to deliver this manualized version. And of course, if you're doing RAP research, they have to be experienced RAP facilitators. You recruit a large number of people into your study, interview them, and randomly assign them into the two groups I spoke about earlier. Then you deliver the intervention using the manual and assessing and maintaining fidelity throughout the study. If one group of facilitators starts to add things and do things that aren't in the manual, you speak to them about that, ask them not to do that. If they leave out parts of the intervention, you similarly address that with them too. And so that's what I mean by maintaining fidelity. And then you are going to collect data from the participants at multiple time points, because remember, you're looking for change. So you're going to assess people before the intervention at the beginning of the study, and then you're going to assess them at 1 or 2 or maybe even 3 or 4 time points after the intervention is received by the experimental group. Then you conduct the analysis and you write it all up and you disseminate the results. So we're going to come back to this notion of evidence-based practice and how I worked with Mary Ellen and a group of RAP facilitators in the state of Ohio in the U.S. To conduct a randomized control trial study and help establish the evidence base for RAP. But before I do that, we're going to hear from Amanda, who's going to talk about what is involved in RAP, what it's like to make a RAP plan, and what kinds of outcomes RAP experience.
Hi, so my name is Amanda Berg, and I guess I should start my webcam so you can see me. Yeah, so I work with Vancouver Coastal Health and I coordinate peer-led recovery workshops. There's a bunch of them. Bridges, Building Recovery of Individual Dreams and Goals Through Education and Support was the very first course that I took that helped me on my recovery journey. And then from there, I became a peer support worker with Mennonite Central Committee Supportive Care Services, which became Communitas. So Jen Kuzik taught me RAP back in like 2003. And so I've worked with Jen over the years, and I really enjoy working with her. She taught me so much and helped me so much in my recovery. So big shout out to Jen. And I'm really excited to be going to one of her workshops in June. So yeah, thanks, Jen. And I guess I'll move on to my next slide. So welcome to the Introduction to Wellness Recovery Action Planning. So what is RAP? So RAP is a program that was developed by Mary Ellen Copeland, who is a person with a mental illness who, like her mother, has struggled with bipolar affective disorder. And the Wellness Recovery Action Plan is an individually developed plan that encourages people to take personal responsibility for their recovery and work towards developing a wellness-oriented lifestyle. So your plan changes over time. Like I used to have a cat, so part of my wellness recovery was feeding my cat, but now I don't have a cat, so that's not on my list. Or you know, I live with different roommates who were my supporters, and then I moved. So it changes over time. So each person's RAP will be unique and revised on an ongoing basis. Developing a RAP can be a highly creative process. You can include collages or drawings, and it includes much more than just filling out forms and making lists. So it's, you know, like a living document. So the benefits of RAP are it draws participants' attention to their strengths. So we do an activity where they describe what they're like when they're healthy and compare that to what they're like when they're not doing their best. So it increases your self-awareness, and it focuses on self-determination and empowerment, you know, that recovery is possible, that hope and education, and a lot of things can make you more empowered. And it provides an opportunity for collaboration with supporters and clarifies the role of supporters. So in your crisis plan, you describe what you want to happen when you're in a crisis and who's going to do what, and you know what their roles are. So some highlights of RAP outcomes include hope for recovery. So we go over Mary Ellen Copeland's story called Remembering Kate, which is about her mother who was institutionalized and told that she would never get out of the hospital. And Mary Ellen's mother, Kate, did get out of the hospital and recover. And so it's an inspirational story. And we also talk about taking personal responsibility for one's own wellness, like you're the expert on yourself. And so no one else can force you to get healthy or well. It's up to you to do the work. And so through RAP, you learn to have a lifestyle that promotes recovery. It's a process. Sometimes you have setbacks and need to get back on track and stuff. So just being aware that there are ways to increase your wellness is huge. And then being aware of your triggers and early warning signs that you're going downhill is also a big component, and developing a crisis plan. So what you want to happen when you're in a crisis. So those are some of the RAP outcomes that happen after you take a RAP course. And the RAP is based on 5 key concepts of recovery. So hope, we talk about Kate's story, who is Mary Ellen's mother, and how she was told, she would always be institutionalized for life and the family should just, forget her, and she would just be in the hospital for the rest of her life. And she did recover and contributed to the community and made friends and stuff like that. And then we talk about personal responsibility. So, if it's going to be, it's up to you, and no one else can do the work. And then education, which is so important. You need to learn about your illness, what it means, what the symptoms are and what's going on. When I was first diagnosed, I was just given a brochure about bipolar disorder and medication, and that was as much education as I had. I was just given a diagnosis and medication in the hospital and a little brochure about bipolar. So I really had to educate myself about my disorder, what it meant, how I could live with it, and just like the stuff I could do and couldn't do, because some people were saying like, oh, you can never work, you can never get an education in college or stuff like that with your illness. So I did go to school and graduated, and just through the process of education, I learned what was possible. And then self-advocacy, that's kind of, your rights. I think when you are diagnosed with a mental illness, like I didn't feel like a person. I just felt like I was a label, basically. And so through advocating for myself, learning about my human rights, and, there's a same for everyone. Just you build more self-confidence, and then support is so important. You can't do it alone, and you do need support with others helping you out and stuff. So those are the 5 key concepts that we go over in the beginning of the RAP program. So that happens in week 1. RAP is an 8-week program. And so RAP includes wellness toolbox, daily maintenance plan, triggers and an action plan, early warning signs and an action plan, when things are breaking down and an action plan, crisis plan, post-crisis plan. So all these, sections are done in 8 weeks. So, and it's about 2.5 hours per session. And so I'll talk about Wellness Toolbox. Wellness Toolbox is anything that you have done in the past or could do to help yourself stay well and help yourself feel better when you're not doing well. So most wellness tools are simple, safe, and free. So, sometimes people struggle, like, what do I do to stay healthy, or what do I enjoy? Like when you're depressed, you don't enjoy anything. So you have to think really hard, like, what do I like doing? Or so it's a process, and then we workshop it and get suggestions. And sometimes it's really helpful to hear what other people do. Like, oh, I like to ride my bike, or I have a hobby like sewing or fishing or whatever. And then you remember like, oh yeah, I did like riding my bike as a kid. So you can add that. So some of my wellness tools are listening to music, doing exercises. I like to watch corny 1980 workout videos with Richard Simmons. So sweating to the oldies and Richard Simmons and the Silver Foxes. It's like Sylvester Stallone's dad, Richard Simmons' mom, all working out. So I do that for fun and it makes me laugh. So that's free. It's on YouTube. So, and then going for walks, you know, having a coffee with a friend, cleaning your house. Those are all simple things that you can do. So you put that in your wellness toolbox. And then daily maintenance planning. So you describe yourself when you're feeling well. Like, I'm very energetic, I'm athletic, I like to socialize with people, I like to ride my bike and stuff like that. And then you make a list of everything you need to do every day to keep, you know, yourself feeling well, and the things that you might choose to do. Maintenance plan is very, very simple. Basically, it involves taking my medication because that totally helps me not hear voices or hallucinate and see things that aren't there, like little green people and stuff like that. And so medication is like my number one thing that I have to do 5 times a day. And then I also eat, you know, even if it's just like 1 meal a day and that's all I can do, you know, that's a step in the right direction. And then I also, what do? I sleep. So I just have 3 things on my daily maintenance plan that I do every day. And that's, you know, I save that plan for when I'm an absolute mess. And then I add things to it. Like, I might want to have a shower. I might want to brush my teeth, floss my teeth, maybe put on makeup, maybe clean my house. Another thing I do, not every day, but when it's garbage day, if I'm feeling down and not having enough energy, I just throw everything in the garbage. But if I'm feeling well, I will separate out the recycling. But if I'm not well, I just throw everything in the garbage. So, you know, that's something that I do, you know, and that for me is helpful because if I'm not feeling great and confused and having a hard time making decisions, just putting everything in the garbage really helps me. And then when I'm well, it's like, oh yeah, I like to recycle and be environmentally friendly and all that. And so I will do that. And so you have a list. And then, you know, you can revisit your list and stuff like that. And it just helps you keep on track. So I have it written down, but it's kind of memorized. So after you do your RAP plan, you know, I've done it for, I don't know how many years, 12 years now, something like that. I have a good handle on it, but it is helpful for me to go to my RAP plan and just, you know, have it there and look through it and be like, oh yeah, I feel crappy. How come? Oh, I didn't get enough sleep, or I haven't taken my medication in 3 days. So then you go back to your daily maintenance plan and you do that, and it can really help prevent a crisis situation from happening. And then we talk about triggers. So triggers are external events outside yourself, or situations or circumstances that, if they happen, they might produce symptoms that are, you know, or maybe very uncomfortable. So a death in the family could be a trigger, or recently my mom out my dad's bank account and she's in the Bahamas. So that was a trigger for me because, you know, my dad was stressing out about how to pay the bills and stuff. And so it's a lot of emotions in me, like, how could my mom do that and stuff like that. So, you know, you identify things that, if they happen, cause an increased symptoms. So for me, finances are a huge stress. So if I have no money, then I freak out. So that's one of my triggers. Or if people are yelling outside my house, it triggers me. I just feel really, really uncomfortable. And I can't control what my neighbors are doing or if they're fighting or whatever. So you identify things that, if in, might increase on. And then you develop a plan of what you can do if these triggers come up and keep them from becoming more serious. So for me, like if my neighbors are fighting, I can listen to music and ignore it. And that helps me calm down and not be so stressed out. Or I can make a budget and just be like, okay, I have this much money for this month. I need to pay the rent, my telephone, pay my insurance, and buy food, and I have enough money, and I have a roof over my head and stuff like that. So that's part of my action plan for financial stress. And early warning signs. Internal signs that may be unrelated to reactions to stressful situations, and they may be subtle signs of change that indicate you need to take further actions. And participants identify any early warning signs that they have noticed, and then they develop a plan that will help use their early warning signs. So for me, I have my plan, and one of my early warning signs is sleep. So if I don't sleep, I get manic, and so that's a sign for me that I am not doing well. Or my personal hygiene goes down. I stop showering. I don't brush my hair or my teeth. So that's another sign. Or I start getting confused and I miss a lot of appointments. Like I'll miss my doctor appointment. I'll make plans with a friend and just not show up and stuff like that. So that's one of my early warning signs, is missing doctor's appointments as well. And sleeping. What else? Just feeling like I'm not connected to people. Or I'm getting depressed, not doing things that I enjoy, not getting out of bed, stuff like that is a sign for me that I need to take action. So when things are breaking down is the next section of RAP. So, in spite of your best effort, even if you do everything on your RAP plan, symptoms might progress to the point where they're very uncomfortable. So you identify symptoms, that means things have gotten worse and they're almost to the crisis stage. And so you make a plan that you think will help reduce your symptoms when they've progressed to that point. So the plan is very effective and with very few choices and clear instructions, so you can follow it. So for me, my basic plan is just medication, sleep, and eating, and that just helps me get back on track. When things are down and I'm going into a crisis, or I start hearing voices, or think that people are talking to me, or I get paranoid that people are following me around. Or I start seeing things like buildings on fire or angels in the sky, and I'll ask my friend, like, hey, do you see that angel? And they're like, no. And so for me, one of my action plans is just to give my keys away if I'm hallucinating, because there's no way I can drive. Or I might start a little bit and stay in my house and go outside less. And then the crisis plan. This is like the biggest section in RAP. So it takes some time to develop. So, it needs to be made when you're feeling at your best, because you are able to think clearly and you can, make choices and make the hard decisions. So you describe symptoms that indicate to others, to your supporters, that they need to take over responsibility for your care and make decisions on your behalf. So if I'm, psychotic and hallucinating and thinking that it's an apocalypse and the world is going to end, I'm not in a state where I can pay the rent or, go to work or or drive or pay bills and stuff like that. So that's when I need help from my supporters so that they can pay the rent and take my car keys and take my bank card and credit card and stuff like that. So for me, the symptoms are psychosis or extreme depression, or I feel suicidal or something. So you specify what you would like to happen in a crisis and what kind of help you don't want or wouldn't like. So for me, I don't like to go to the psychiatric assessment unit in the hospital because I find it really stressful. So for me, I would like to go to Venture, which is a short stay treatment program in a little house. And the staff are very nice. And I've done some rep work, in the house and stuff. So I feel comfortable there. Or I would go to Willow Pavilion Tertiary Mental Health because I've also done work there. I did a support group for voices and vision hearers. And so I feel comfortable there and I know the staff and stuff like that. So that's where I would like to go ideally. But, so that's on my list. That's on my crisis plan. And then you identify indicators that the plan doesn't need to be followed anymore. So if I'm taking my medication, I'm eating, I'm sleeping enough, I'm able to connect with my friends and go outside, then, and I'm not in the hospital anymore, then I don't need to, people to intervene on my behalf. So then you give your plan to your friends or your supporters and they sign it. And you give a copy to your doctor or psychiatrist or your case manager or, anyone who's involved in your care. And they sign it. And then you go on to the post-crisis plan. So this is a very important time when you're healing and recovering from a crisis. And so you address issues after a crisis and make a timetable for resuming your responsibility. And this can enhance your recovery and wellness. So you just make a plan and be like, okay, I'm eating, sleeping, taking my meds, having less symptoms or no symptoms. I'm ready to take charge of my life again. So, my dad can give me my car keys. I can get my bank card back. I can go shopping for groceries. Or maybe I want my mom to fill up my fridge or clean my house or whatever if it's messy and I'm coming back from the hospital. So these are part of my post-crisis plan. And then, so some of the advantages of RAP are that, you're an active participant in your recovery and your treatment, and you acquire knowledge and skills that help you live a satisfying and productive life. And then there's opportunity to collaborate with supporters and clarify what you want them to do. Because sometimes when you're sick and you're not at your best, people just don't know how to deal with you. They're like, okay, you're hallucinating and seeing angels in the sky. What do I do? You're crazy or you're not yourself. So yeah, one time I went on a picnic and in the woods with a friend and I was hallucinating and she had to drive me home even though she didn't have a driver's license. This was before cell phones, but yeah, so she was like, okay, my role right now is to get you to your parents' house and drive your car and get us out of the woods. So that's what she did. So yeah, it just establishes roles for people and what they need to do. So she wasn't freaking out. She wasn't like, oh, she needs to go to the hospital. She just brought me to my parents' house and drove the car home. And it combats stigma by showing consumers to be competent and capable. So, you can manage your health. You might not feel like it. It might be difficult, but you can. And you're the expert on yourself. You know what works and what doesn't. Over time, you learn what medications work for you, what doesn't. And yeah, my microphone fell off. Hold on a second. My microphone fell off. Sorry. Hopefully you can hear me. But yeah, there's a lot of stigma out there that mentally ill people are incapable of having productive lives, of contributing to community, of being responsible. And a RAP plan just really helps you to combat stigma and to show people like, hey, I have a mental illness, but it doesn't control my life. I'm still able to work and have a job and, be responsible, live on my own. And, it doesn't matter that I have a mental illness. And then RAP really recognizes that there's value in, people's firsthand experience. And that is what makes RAP so powerful, is because you're connecting with people with mental illnesses and they're telling you what helped them, and you're sharing personal stories. And it's so important to hear from other people that you're not alone. And you do make friends from RAP, and I'm so grateful. Sorry. I'm just so grateful for RAP because it really helped me out. And yeah, it just allows the mental health system, that you're not just a case file in some file folder or computer. It just incorporates that consumers, are experts in mental health, and they can contribute and be responsible. And it just really, brings the lived experience into the system. So I'm just so grateful, that we have RAP, and that it does work, and that service providers do respect your plan. And then, yeah, RAP provides the opportunity to witness recovery in others and model recovery in yourself. For me, it's really difficult to watch people be in psychosis or actively hearing voices. That's actually a trigger for me. And one of my RAP instructors was psychotic, and she wanted to start a wellness recovery action plan in her country of Barbados, or sorry, Trinidad. And so she had all this money and came to my office and was like, I want to hire you. We're going to Barbados or Trinidad, and we're going to start RAP there. And I was like, okay, but this isn't right. So I took her to the bank, made her put her money back in the bank, and then brought her to her house. She lives in social housing with staff. And so the staff were like, yeah, she's not well right now. And so the staff, got her into the hospital where she got help. So yeah, you just can help people in their recovery process when they're not well, and you can model recovery for other people. And then it does make stronger social connections. I've met so many people either teaching RAP or being in a workshop, and we'll go for coffee after or exchange phone numbers and hang out and stuff like that. It focuses on the strengths of the individual. You're looking not at your weaknesses or your symptoms, but what you can do. And it opens up possibilities and allows for transformation and growth to find meaning and purpose in life. So recovery is possible. There is hope. Even, in the darkest hours, there's still a meaning and purpose in your life. And is that the next slide? Right, so I'm going to hand it back to Dr. Judith Cook, and she's going to share more about evidence-based practice, and her research.
Hi again, everyone. I thought that was an incredibly wonderful presentation that Amanda gave, not only on the elements of rap, but by being willing and able to share with us the way that rap actually works in a person's life by giving some examples from our own experiences. I hope you were able to catch a little of the magic of it and why it is so effective, because it really builds on people's own knowledge of their recovery, the fact that they are experts in their own recovery and in what makes them well, and that it also creates networks of people who are aware that they're relying on each other and are willing to help each other, and that these networks are natural. They may or may not involve professionals, and many times don't. Because, as we all know, there are times we need professionals to help us in our recovery, and then there are times we need friends and supporters to help us get on with our lives. So I think that was just an incredible presentation, and I applaud Amanda for giving us all a really good sense of what RAP involves and what a person's RAP plan might look like. So the RAP intervention that we tested in the research that I'm going to tell you about was exactly what Amanda described. It also included wellness toolbox and creating a daily maintenance plan and using it, learning about your triggers, how to identify those and deal with those, what your early warning signs are, and learning that when you see them, there's plenty of time to do something. The early warning signs are not an indication that it's all downhill. When you see those signs, it's time to put your plan in action, and you've got your plan and can rely on it, and you can veer away from things totally breaking down. So we worked with Mary Ellen to write an even more detailed RAP manual than the Red Book. And we made decisions about exactly how RAP would be taught for our study. And we decided that RAP would last for 8 weeks and that people would meet once a week for 2.5 hours. There was a break for some food and fellowship. And we used a really highly standardized curriculum, because you'll see in a minute, we delivered 3 waves of RAP in 5 different cities. And so there was a lot of opportunity for variation in RAP's quality, but also for lack of fidelity. And so we decided, a lot of times RAP facilitators share their own stories and experiences with the group and then ask the group to share back. And we decided the part where facilitators share their own experience, instead, for the research study, they would actually share experiences from Mary Ellen's own life. And that RAP worked really nicely because that reduced that amount of variability. And in my experience, Mary Ellen is so inspiring that everyone wants to learn more about her life, particularly about how she's dealt with tough times and come out on top. We had really experienced RAP facilitators, so one of our challenges and one of their challenges was for them not to innovate and not to do anything different, so that RAP would be taught the same way by all the facilitators at all the locations. So for this, we used the detailed facilitators manual. It even broke down how many minutes you were supposed to spend on this, that, and the other. And everyone used the same overhead slides. So I would say the version that we tested in the research was a tiny bit different than maybe what you might get if you were to go to a RAP class that was taught by a trained, certified RAP facilitator. But research is always like that. In a randomized control trial, there's an effort to control the intervention a little more than would necessarily happen out in the real world. But it was essentially RAP. If you attended it, and you're familiar with RAP, you would recognize it. So I think I told you earlier that we did RAP in the state of Ohio, which we chose with Mary Ellen, because it had a lot of RAP facilitators, but the state wasn't saturated with RAP. If you go to a state, we thought of using the state of Vermont, which is Mary Ellen's home state, but what we realized was so many people already knew RAP that we weren't going to be able to do a study that involved people that were new to RAP. So Ohio had trained facilitators. It had some areas where RAP hadn't been introduced or not introduced very widely. It is a diverse state. that includes some rural and urban and suburban areas. It has a diverse population with people of different races and ethnicities. So it really fit the bill as a good location for our study. We used the model of participatory action research where people work together, researchers, community members, developers of the intervention, in this case peers and mental health providers. We all work together to design the study, to check in to make sure that the procedures were fair and made sense, and we guided the study together. That's a challenging design to use, but I think at the end of the day it results in better research. And it was really essential in this case because we needed the peer community to be part of what we were doing. And given that they're not researchers, participatory action research was a great design because in that model, everybody does what they do best. The researchers are free to concentrate on, making the research rigorous. The RAP participants and the RAP educators were free to concentrate on making RAP the best it could be. The mental health service providers were very good at helping us see where there might be logistical challenges, given that we were going to be teaching it in a variety of places in the state. So everyone contributing together made the study better than it would have been otherwise. We brought people that were certified by the Copeland Institute or by a Copeland Institute instructor and trainer together in the city of Columbus, which is in the middle of the state. These people had all done RAP before. We introduced them to the intervention version of RAP. We told them about the research. They practiced different sessions of RAP so that we could see that they would be able to adhere to it. And we got a chance to see just how great they all were as RAP facilitators. And this picture is from the end of the training. It was a 2.5-day training. And they've all been certified and we're ready to go back home and start this RAP study. And so if you look at these RAP facilitators, all I can say is without them there would have been no research. And so I just love the smiles and I love the enthusiasm. Another thing about these folks was they signed up to teach a lot of RAP. Probably more RAP than you might offer if you're a RAP facilitator. I mean, they signed on to deliver wave after wave after wave. There were breaks between waves, but they delivered a lot of RAP, more than they were used to delivering. And they also delivered it in a slightly different way because remember, they delivered it to people that were actually recruited into a research study. So unlike some places where, people leading a RAP group might, let's say you're at a peer program, might be going around talking to folks that haven't experienced RAP yet and saying, hey, would you be interested? We're starting a RAP group. Would you like to come? These facilitators hadn't met people that were in their RAP groups before the first session. So things were a little different. It's a little different to deliver RAP to people that come in for a research study than it is delivering it to people in the more regular way of recruiting them from mental health programs or from peer programs. We aim to recruit 500 people into our study. We did this because we wanted to have a wide variety of people. We wanted to be able to say one of the criticisms of RAP at the time was it wasn't culturally sensitive. There was too much reading and too much writing, and therefore people at low levels of literacy wouldn't be able to benefit from it. And it was too middle class, so therefore people that were poor or people from different racial, ethnic minority groups. There were just all kinds of criticisms, mainly from traditional service providers, but also from the peer community. So we wanted to have a lot of people, so we had a diverse group of research participants, so we could look at whether RAP worked as well for men as for women, and for older than younger people, and for rural people and urban people. We recruited them at both community mental health centers as well as peer-run programs, and they were randomized, randomly assigned by chance to receive either RAP right away or 9 months later. So we used something that researchers refer to as a waitlist control group. So the people that were in the control condition did not get RAP, but after the study was over, we guaranteed them an opportunity to experience RAP. We interviewed them at baseline, which was at the time they came into the study, before the experimental group got RAP. Then we interviewed them 2 months after baseline, which was at the end of RAP for the experimental group and just 2 months after baseline for the control group. And then we waited 6 months to see if the effects of RAP would last beyond actually the time of participating in the group. We interviewed them 8 months post-baseline. I said I'd tell you what blinded interviewers were. They were not visually impaired. They were interviewers that did not know whether the people they were interviewing were in the control condition or the experimental condition. That makes it even more rigorous in terms of research rigor. And of course, participants were paid for their research time. They were reimbursed a certain amount of money for the first, second, and third interview, and then a bonus if they did all 3. But of course, the research was voluntary. They could drop out at any time from the research, but still continue to participate in RAP. I mentioned how important fidelity is. And it's important not just if you're doing a research project, it's also important if you're out there teaching RAP in the community. It's very important you don't stray from the way RAP is supposed to be taught, because Mary Ellen and her colleagues, when they developed it in a certain order and taught in a certain way for a reason. And so we needed to make sure that the critical ingredients of RAP were being delivered by people. We wanted to make sure there weren't individual variations that people were using that could lower the quality of RAP. And we wanted to protect against any kind of negative influences, such as personal biases that people would have, or people that would bring in politics or religion. Those things are not to be discussed in RAP. That's part of the comfort and safety agreement that people make at the beginning of participating in RAP. Politics stays outside, talking about sex stays outside, and racism and sexism and all the isms stay outside, but they can still creep in. And so fidelity was a way of making sure that that didn't happen. We did this by creating a fidelity checklist for each session to make sure that everything was presented as it was supposed to be, that the right handouts were given to people, that the right slides were shown, that people actually discussed things for the right length of time, and that they were on topic for the discussion. The 2 RAP advanced level facilitators that were the local team, because remember, we were in Chicago, they were in Ohio, Chicago's in Illinois, Ohio is 2 states over, so we needed local RAP experts, and in this case these were RAP advanced level facilitators, and they observed the RAP classes, not every single one, but the RAP classes as they were being taught, in order to also make sure that, that the intervention was being adhered to. We had weekly calls with the facilitators, the local coordinators who were the advanced RAP facilitator experts, and the researchers, where we talked about any problems people might have been having. We reviewed attendance, because attendance is very important in a research study. We looked at people's fidelity scores and made sure that fidelity was good. And I think, you know, the RAP facilitators really enjoyed this part of the study, because many times RAP facilitators are out there teaching RAP on their own, and when there are problems, they have their co-facilitator to talk to, but they're really oftentimes dealing with stuff just between the 2 of them. So they really liked the weekly check-in that lasted about an hour. We had Mary Ellen would come on sometimes, and then other times different RAP experts would come on to talk about challenges and problems, and then the local coordinators would always review what was coming up in the next session. There was a big amount of concern from people that didn't know RAP well, I think I would say, about whether peers could, and because for our study, you know that RAP can be taught by peers and non-peers, as long as they are people that have been trained, and as long as they use their own RAP plan. They don't have to be people that have lived experience of mental illness. But there was this feeling that peers wouldn't be able to adhere to a high level of fidelity. And if you look at the slide there, you'll see that in wave 1, they started out at 90% fidelity. They ended up at 92% fidelity. So we got rid of that myth by conducting our study and reporting those results in the literature. Here's a look at the characteristics of the people that we recruited. And I think what I would maybe say about these characteristics was that they're pretty typical of people that are attending community mental health center programs in the United States in terms of what kind of diagnostic labels they have and what percentage are working. Most people were not employed. Most people had been in the hospital at least once for a psychiatric reason. Many were not married, but many lived in their own home or apartment. So it's just an opportunity for you to get a look at who was in our study. Maybe the one thing that might have been a little different is we had a slightly higher representation of women in our study than the 50-50 representation in the general population. And we don't know why this is. I'm going to tell you in a moment about a study we did in Illinois that was also a randomized control trial where we had slightly more men in the sample. So, things happen when you recruit people into a research study. You can't always explain them or predict them. Here's a look at what we found in terms of people's RAP outcomes. So remember, what we're looking at is we're looking at people at the beginning of the study, then immediately after RAP, but for the control group, that was just 2 months later because they didn't get RAP, and then 6 months later after the second assessment. So we're not only looking to see if people changed over time, but also whether there was differences in the experimental and the control group. And we found that the people that had received RAP were significantly more likely to improve in terms of having reduced severity of their psychiatric symptoms, particularly feeling less depressed and less anxious. They felt more hopeful about their futures and their chances of recovery. They reported having an increased quality of life over time that was significantly better than the control group. I like this next finding. They were better able to advocate for themselves with both medical and mental health service providers. They had a better, higher sense of their own recovery. We used the recovery assessment scale, and they scored higher on that than the control group. And they had an enhanced and significantly greater sense of personal empowerment than the control group. And I think that speaks somewhat to RAP's emphasis on self-determination, self-direction, and the notion that people are the architects of their own recovery. They are the experts in what makes them well and how to stay well. We also found that the dose of RAP, and the first time I used that term, Mary Ellen rolled her eyes at me, but she laughed. But really with dose, what we're referring to is, there were 8 sessions. Well, did people come to all the sessions? Because many people didn't. And for a variety of different reasons. The more sessions that people attended, so now these are findings that relate only to the experimental group, the more their overall symptom severity was reduced, the less depressive symptoms and anxious symptoms they reported, the better their quality of life over time, and the more recovered they felt over time. I think this is an important finding because sometimes people, will attend a few sessions of RAP and then either drop out because they don't like it, or because they get a job, or because they can't find childcare anymore. And I think this notion of the greater the amount of RAP that you're exposed to, the better your outcomes, is a real argument for making RAP available on a continuous basis. You don't just offer RAP for 8 weeks and then say, okay, in another year we'll make it available. Much better if RAP can be offered for a couple of months, maybe then there's a break, and then it's offered for another couple of months, because some people are going to come in and come out, and the more RAP they're exposed to, we showed, the better their outcomes. Now, I told you that we have just finished a second randomized control study. We did that here in Illinois. And in this particular study, we assigned 143 people to RAP, or instead of a waitlist control, this time we used a nutrition education course. And we used the same assessment time period as before, baseline 2 months and 8 months. And what we found in this study was that the RAP participants significantly reduced their use of formal services, both overall total services, but also both individual and group services. And And in addition to that, they were more likely than the control condition to reduce their perceived need for services. So it wasn't just that they got less services, they also felt like they needed fewer services. So, you know, that's a good thing, but it wouldn't be a good thing if their outcomes were poor, all right? I mean, we're not about saying we offered this intervention and everybody stopped using services, but actually they didn't do very well. So what's important about the Illinois study was we showed that even though people reduced their use of services and perceived a less need for those services, their outcomes were just as good. And I think that's an important point for system administrators, mental health system administrators and health system administrators to be aware of. So I've told you a lot about some numbers and randomized, you know, controlled design and all of that. Let's talk about some qualitative findings, some ideas about what happened in people's lives in their own words. This is Sam, who says that a rap helped him feel more motivated and hopeful, and having a definite plan in place to avoid a major crisis. I think maybe one of the things that help people feel less anxious. I mean, I can't say that for sure, but I know if it was me, when I have a plan in place, I definitely worry less. Stephen talked about the fact that rap helped enhance his self-confidence. He learned what his triggers are and you know, can use that knowledge to stay out of the hospital. The daily maintenance plan is very powerful, and one thing Amanda talked about that I think is worth emphasizing is it's a simple plan. It's not about doing anything difficult or super challenging. It's about getting enough sleep and getting good nutrition and making sure you connect with people and with music, and it's, you know, it's not this big deal. It's the things that you agree to do every day to keep yourself well. And for Stephen, that was one of the ingredients for success for him. The other thing that we learned, and that we didn't really do a study on, but certainly someone could do a study on this, was the effect of teaching rap on the rap facilitators. And the reason we have some information about this is because we met with them for an hour every week on the phone. So we had opportunities for, you know, them to tell us things like, you know, having to do all this fidelity is stressful with you researchers, but on the other hand, boy, do I know how to facilitate rap better than I did coming into this study. I now realize that because you monitored me on, you know, discussing some of the things that are actually difficult and hard to get people to talk about, I knew I had to make sure I got a good discussion going, and so now I'm really good at that part of facilitating rap where maybe I wasn't as good. I saw it as a weak area before. They talked about using the research findings in advocating for more rap, which I think is a real challenge for all of us, how to make the system pay for more rap. Also, because we spent a lot of time trying to make sure that people could get to their rap classes and helping them work out transportation, and sometimes the rap facilitators even went and picked them up in their cars or arranged car sharing among the group. They actually got to know their rap participants' lives in a little bit more detail, because they learned about some of the problems that people have that were about logistical issues getting to rap and might not have come up in the rap class. So they felt that they knew their rap participants better. And they also felt that being in the study had changed their lives for the better. And I'm not saying that's because they were doing the research. It was because they were doing so much rap. So Tom said, for example, I gave a lot for this research project, but I got a lot out of it. And then Rita, who developed a rap, many of our facilitators developed a rap for dealing with us as the researchers, because it was stressful to have us messing around in their business and taking attendance and you know, looking at their fidelity and saying, oh, you know, we were nice about it, but, you know, you forgot this discussion, or there was a fire drill, so remember when you start the next session, you're going to have to go back and look at missed material. So a lot of them developed a rap for dealing with us as researchers, but Rita developed a rap because she realized that she was carrying around a lot of extra pounds, and it was very difficult for her to be able to deliver a lot of rap for the study, and she ended up losing 100 pounds as a result of that particular rap. So we collected our data, we did our analyses, it worked out, yay, because we were prepared to show as researchers that RAP was ineffective, or even that RAP made people worse. I mean, that's what you do as a researcher. Even if you think that the intervention works, you probably wouldn't study it otherwise. You need to be prepared to tell the truth. And thank goodness the truth is that RAP actually improves people's outcomes. This is the first journal article that is reporting on the results of a randomized controlled trial of the study of RAP's effectiveness. And it's this study that enabled RAP to enter NREP, which is something that our federal government in the United States keeps. It's a national registry of evidence-based programs and practices. And if you later go and click on that link, you'll go to the section that's in NREP on RAP. And having RAP in NREP just enabled all kinds of advocacy to happen in the United States, even outside the state of Ohio. Because it enabled us to ask the people that fund our services some tough questions about what they're funding and why, and whether some funding couldn't be directed toward more RAP given that we know that it works. So why did we do this? I mean, what was the rewards of establishing RAP as an evidence-based practice? I mean, this was not just about Judith Cook's career and wanting to publish articles. This is about helping more people learn about the intervention. People are just more interested to hear about interventions that work. We helped enhance RAP's legitimacy. I don't know that we did much to enhance its legitimacy among peers. I think peers already were sold on RAP. But, you know, that was the choir. We wanted to preach to people outside of the choir. And having a strong research base for RAP helped make that happen. It's easier to make the case for funding, at least in the United States, things that are evidence-based practices. It also enhances the opportunities that people are going to take RAP and say, you know, this would be really interesting to adapt for teenagers. And that's actually going on right now in Ottawa, as a matter of fact. Or, you know, why couldn't RAP be used by people when they're in inpatient settings? And so it enhances the potential that people are going to pick an intervention up and adjust it a little bit, not change the important elements of it, but adjust it and mold it a little bit for particular target audiences. People are using RAP for folks with developmental disabilities, for people with diabetes, for people that have experienced trauma. RAP's now being developed and used for a number of different groups of people, in addition to folks that have had serious mental health challenges. And you know, another thing that having research evidence does, in addition to increasing the knowledge base about the intervention, is it brings other researchers into the fold. I don't want to study RAP until I die. I want other researchers to come in. In fact, I want other researchers in Canada, and would be happy to work with some to study RAP in a Canadian context to make sure that it's as effective in Canada as it has been in the US. Because what we have to remember about interventions is they can be culturally bound, so they need to be tested in new cultures if they're introduced there. So how might those of you on today's webinar build on RAP's evidence-based practice status in your work in British Columbia? What can you do with this knowledge that RAP's an evidence-based practice? One of the things that I would advise you to do is first of all, get a good understanding of what your system, your Ministry of Health, is actually spending its money on. What's it funding and how much is it spending on acute care versus inpatient care versus community-based care versus peer services? Have that knowledge. And then once you take a look at that, I think you're going to find that not much money is being spent on RAP, so then you can advocate for implementing RAP more widely and for considering using RAP in place of some services that don't have an evidence base. And, you know, that will obviously be, you know, a bit of a struggle. But sometimes when you're the first person to say, you know, we're funding these in the United States, a practice that gets used a lot, that has no evidence base, is called partial hospitalization. It's kind of like programs where people come in and sit around and smoke and watch TV and drink coffee. And so sometimes when you say, hey, there's no evidence for partial hospitalization, we're spending, $2 million on it, why can't we shift some of that funding over to RAP? It's got an evidence base. Sometimes service providers are very willing to listen and to hear. Something else you might do is you might ask your service providers to consider shifting some funds away from intensive, expensive services like acute care, putting a little of that funding into RAP, and then looking to see if people's outcomes don't improve by working with them a little bit upstream, putting plans in place to help keep them well so that they're less likely to show up and use expensive, intensive acute care services. I think you have to be willing to demonstrate fidelity to the Copeland Center's version of RAP. I think it's very important. You're not going to be able to argue that what you're providing has an evidence base if you don't do that. And then finally, I think it's really important to provide local support and training for RAP facilitators. They need to be paid fairly, the going rate, they don't need to subsidize RAP by taking less money than other service providers of equivalent levels of certification and expertise. They need to not have the struggle of trying to figure out who will give them space to lead their RAP groups and how will they pay for the RAP materials. RAP is free to participants, but that doesn't mean that people magically have money to pay for the materials and for the snacks and so forth and so on. So we need to make sure that people have the funds to do that. And I think they also need to receive ongoing refinement of their RAP facilitation skills and feedback and general supportive correction if they start straying from the model from advanced level facilitators. Otherwise, we're asking people to be out there delivering a service, and RAP is a service, with no support and in a context that we wouldn't ask any other professional, and I do feel that RAP facilitators are professionals, we wouldn't ask another professional to deliver services in that particular way. This slide sends you to some places where you can read further information about RAP. mentalhealthrecovery.com is where you would actually purchase you would buy the Red Book there, and you would buy different manuals that Mary Ellen has developed. I think some of them are really interesting. The Loneliness Workbook is something where people use RAP to specifically combat loneliness. And then if you're interested in RAP training, I think you've got a lot of advanced level facilitators in your own in BC to get trained by. But if you wanted to get training from people at the Copeland Center, there is the website address for that. If you'd like to hear more or read more about the RAP research that we've been doing, there's a link to that. And then there's also a link to the first ever journal article about the effectiveness of RAP. So I think I'm going to turn it back over to Regina, and we'll entertain some questions and comments from the audience. But thank you all for being with us today. It's always a joy and a pleasure to tell people about the work that we're doing in terms of our RAP research. Thank you.
Thank you both Dr. Cook for a wonderful, wonderful presentation. Thank you as well, Amanda, for really helping us feel the heart and soul of RAP, to be able to, have some sense of what it is like to plan and to plan for your own wellness and develop a crisis plan. And I think Dr. Cook's research really helps us situated in what we know at this point is an evidence-based practice. And I hope that you find too that just that personal experience and the research leaves us in a better place to be able to both advocate for and describe the benefits of this intervention. We did have one question that was directed at Dr. Cook, so perhaps you'd like to answer this. It came from Ruth, who asked about identifying outcome measures specifically that determined some of your outcomes in this study. So specifically the tools that were used, I think, was really Ruth's question. Feel free to edit that, Ruth, if you need to.
Sorry, Dr. Cook, we've just lost your mic for a second.
Okay, I think I'm back. So the question was about what tools did we use to measure the outcomes that I talked about. I referred to the recovery assessment scale. That was one measure that we used. To measure self-advocacy, we used something called the patient self-advocacy scale that was actually developed to measure self-advocacy in medical settings, so we just adapted it a little bit to mental health settings. We used a well-known HOPE scale to measure people's feelings of hopefulness about their life. So this would have been a scale that it wasn't specifically for people with mental health difficulties. To measure symptoms, we used the BSI, the Brief Symptom Inventory, which is a self-report symptom scale. For services, we used a particular measure where people report that has a service and a definition for it, and then people say whether they did or didn't get that service in a particular time period, as well as whether they feel they need that service now and how much they need it. If people want to write to me, my email address is on the first slide of the presentation. I can send you a list of the scales that we used, and in some cases I can share the scales. In other cases, like the BSI, it's a proprietary instrument and I can't send it to you, but I can at least give you a reference for some articles where you can read about it.
Such a comprehensive response, Dr. Cook, and also just want to acknowledge how thirsty people are for these kinds of tools in our community. So really appreciate you advancing this work in that way and asking these kinds of questions. Thank you. And Ruth says thanks as well. Thanks, Ruth. So just like we have a couple of minutes, so if there are any other questions that people might have, for either person who's just presented and also for our guest in the audience, Jen Cusack. I know that there was a great conversation with people thinking about developing some services in British Columbia with Jen. And we have to say, we just want to acknowledge we're terribly excited about that, to be able to connect people. So thank you kindly for your work on that. I think that Amanda might have something to say.
Yeah, just thanks for listening, and thanks, Cinnamon, for your support and stuff.
So I think it might be a great opportunity to take advantage of the presence of our wonderful extra guest who was with us today, Jen Cusack, who made time in her very busy schedule to come and be here. Not only to participate in today's webinar, but also to answer some questions. And there's Jen. So Jen is saying hi, but Jen, we can't hear you. So the only thing you need to do is just make sure your mic is on. Little green symbol, microphone beside your speaker symbol.
There?
Yep, that's the one. Excellent. So I know there was a list of questions about availability and access to RAP facilitators, trainings, as well as sort of geographic stuff and tailoring specialization of RAP to different communities. So I don't know if you have an idea of where you want to start, maybe.
Okay, well, I can give a little bit of my history, I guess, if that would help, and then how I can support other people in building RAP in your communities. So originally I heard about RAP in about 2002, and I went to a place in Phoenix, Arizona, where they were doing RAP, and I was with a couple of peers, and we came back and we were like, this is an amazing program. So we worked really, really hard to bring it to Fraser East area. And Amanda was on that team. She was one of the people that we worked, together with to build RAP. And it was a slow build. It was one of those things that, people are unsure about it. So we do groups and sometimes we didn't have enough people. And then, after a period of time, we started having wait lists and people were excited about it. People were applying to take it. and we almost didn't have enough capacity to meet the needs. So, and then it spread to other parts of Fraser Health, and over time it just grew in all the different areas, communities in Fraser Health. And then for me personally, I really find it it's a very exciting part of my work. And I had maternity leave a couple of years ago, and then following my maternity leave, I decided to not go back to my regular job, and I am starting a business. And one of the things that I am doing within my business is building RAP within Canada, Western Canada. That's kind of the area that I'm working on. So right now I have 2 contracts that I'm supporting Fraser Health in building their RAP program, and also Island Health. And both of those programs are looking at, well, especially Fraser Health is looking at doing a community redesign in how they offer mental health services. And they're looking at not just approaching it as a case management system. And I can't speak to the larger piece of that, but I can speak to how RAP fits. So the goal is for the leadership of Fraser Health, they have a strategic plan in place as far as RAP goes, and they have decided that by 2020 they want 100% of their mental health clients to have access to a RAP group, which means it's around 10,000 to 14,000 people, which is a lot of people. So we're looking at changing up the way that RAP is offered. So it started out within peer support, which is a fantastic place to start. And now it is building within, they're going to offer it within mental health centers. So right now, this year, we've got 5 facilitator trainings, and we're training people who are clinicians, people who are peers, all different people. They have to take a RAP workshop first, and then they are going to be trained as facilitators. So then ideally it would be great if a clinician facilitated a RAP group with a peer, and that's the ideal. Sometimes it might not always work out that way, but so it's going to be, RAP will be incorporated into the service that Fraser Health offers for all their clients, and Island Health is trying to do something similar, not quite as large scale, but yeah. Is that good? Or should I add more?
That's more than good. I think that maybe we can just have a little minute or two, see if there are any last comments or any last questions. Jen, it's really nice to have that situated experience from another part of not just Vancouver Coastal, but also Fraser Health. So really grateful to have you with us. And we'll just see if there's another question. I know it's noon, so probably people's bellies are rumbling. They may need to go to get to lunch. So we'll just see if there's one more. I see one person's typing, so perhaps there's a question here. Yeah, we will. Adrian asks, how can we access training in Ontario or Thunder Bay? So I'm not sure if any one of our presenters would like to respond to that question.
Well, I can speak to that. You can certainly email me, and I can add my email address in there. And I could work with you at bringing it there, or I often partner with the Copeland Center as well with bringing RAP to different places. So I could support you in that.
Wonderful resource. Thank you, Jen.
Okay. Do I have time to just speak to, there was a question about can anyone facilitate RAP? And I just wanted to expand on that a little bit. Is there time?
Let's end with that. Let's end with that thought. Absolutely.
Okay. So the idea is anyone that facilitates RAP has to come in on a shoulder-to-shoulder level with everybody. So RAP, what I've seen is pretty profound in breaking down barriers and hierarchies within systems. So if a clinician or someone who is a mental health case manager or a professional comes in to facilitate RAP, they we do the training exactly the same for anyone. And the idea is that people have to be willing to share their wellness recovery experience. And what we found is almost everyone can speak to wellness or recovery on a personal level. And at the beginning of the week, it's amazing. We do a 5-day training. Usually people come in with their hats on, with their, I'm an occupational therapist, I'm a nurse. And by the end of the week, or I'm a peer support worker, by the end of the week, everyone is so connected and seeing things on the same page. And I just see how amazing it is in just creating a different culture within the service system, that we're all human beings, we all struggle, we all can fit into any different category at any point in time, and let's just look at this as something that everyone can use, everyone can benefit, and nobody's better than anyone else. It's all about that. Each person's an expert on themselves, and that's so powerful.
Thanks. That's a really wonderful way to end, Jen. I'll just invite Dr. Cook or our fellow presenter if there's any last words people would like to say.
No, just thank you for listening and watching our webinar.
Dr. Cook, any last words from you?
No, I just want to encourage everybody that's on today's webinar to learn more about RAP and do what you can to help it spread and take hold throughout British Columbia. And thanks for being willing to listen to my research. Bye, everyone.
Oh, I forgot one thing. There's a RAP in Vancouver on May 22nd. So go to spotlightonmentalhealth.com for more information.
Wonderful. So we end with a really good resource that's up and coming and available to people. So what a great way to finish this presentation. Just would like to take a moment to really deeply appreciate our presenters for their flexibility, for their content, for bringing their heart and their head to this amazing presentation. Thanks to you for being the audience and staying with us for the entire time. Thanks for the great questions, and thanks for your continued participation. If you would like to hear more about this topic or a similar topic, please do email us. Please give us this information in the feedback. Jen has said that she'd be willing to do a session for us, so perhaps there's some additional information you'd like to hear about. So please do keep us in mind when you're thinking about education. Let us know how we can help you. Thank you kindly. Have a wonderful weekend. And for all of you mamas who've supported mamas in the room, we wish you a happy Mamas Weekend.